You know, the Resident Evil gaming franchise is probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. I mean, with their era-defining, first installment, really establishing the foothold in the survival horror genre, to Resident Evil 4, pioneering the third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, and most currently, Resident Evil 8's, yeah, it's no wonder why this franchise is one of my favorites. But let's talk about the entry, or rather, one that may not have fit the bill. Let's discuss this. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is AJ bringing in the new year with a new series called Was It That Bad? And in this series, I plan on delving into different video game, tech, and tech-related news topics that are divisive at best and controversial at worst. And today, on the chopping block, we're going to be looking at Resident Evil 6, Capcom's red-headed stepchild. And we're going to answer the question of, was it that bad? Yes. Yes, it was. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, guys. I'll catch you next time. I'm sorry. That was incredible cringe. But in all seriousness, in order to answer the question as best as I can, we're going to look at the plot, characters, and the game mechanics, and then I'll offer my opinions on what I did like, what I didn't like, and, just the general consensus. And we'll delve into it. Oh, and even though the game is 10 years old at this point, I'm pretty sure there are some people who haven't played it and who might want to. So, yeah, spoiler warning. So, the story starts off in December 2012 with Jake Muller, a rebel mercenary in the Eastern European city-state of Edonia. At the behest of a benevolent benefactor, who we'll get to later, Jake and his fellow rebels take what they think are nutritional supplements. But because this is Resident Evil, surprise surprise, turns out they were doses of a new virus, turning everyone but Jake into mutated BOWs. After things unsurprisingly turn to shit, Jake meets up with a grown Sherry Birkin. Yes, the same Sherry Birkin, daughter of William Birkin from Raccoon City. Sherry, who now works as a trained agent for the US government, informs Jake that their supplements were actually doses of the new C virus, and that Jake, being the only survivor, made him the key to making a vaccine. As the two begin to make their way out, they are pursued by a new Tyrant-class enemy named Ustanok. While being chased, the two cross paths with our favorite boulder-punching protagonist, Chris Redfield, and his BSAA team. We'll get to Chris in a bit. After fleeing Edonia on a helicopter, Jake and Sherry are unsurprisingly attacked by Ustanok, who manages to destroy the helicopter, forcing the pair to crash land. While Jake avoids much of the damage, Sherry is mortally wounded. Or she would have been had it not been for the end results of her father's experiments with the G virus back in Resident Evil 2, which was really cool to see pay off. But before we know it, Ada Wong and her Neo Umbrella team catches up with the two. Alright, let's pause for a second. To avoid further confusion with this fustercluck of a plot, I'm just going to state this plain out that this is actually not Ada Wong, but a clone of Ada called Carla Radamez. We'll get to that later. Now, going forward, I will differentiate between the two. Now, let's get back to the story. Once Carla catches up with Jake and Sherry, it is here that she reveals that Jake is actually the illegitimate son of none other than the big daddy of Resident Evil villains, Albert Wesker, which explains Jake's immunity to the C virus. We'll touch upon this later. Carla manages to capture both Jake and Sherry and transport them to a facility in China where they are experimented on for the next 6 months. Now, let's get back to Chris and Pierre's story, which runs parallel to Jake and Sherry's. In response to the report of BOWs in Edonia, the BSAA dispatched Chris's team to handle the problem. This is how they cross paths with Jake and Sherry. Now, upon entering the Neo Umbrella facility, Ada Wong, who is actually Carla, is revealed to be a captive of Neo Umbrella. It's when Chris's team attempts to rescue her that they find out that it's a trap. Save for Chris and his fellow comrade Piers Nivens, Carla manages to infect the rest of the BSAA team, forcing the two to dispatch their fellow soldiers while barely making it out. Due to the trauma of this incident, Chris suffers from a convenient 6-month period of amnesia. Now, we're going to put a pin in this and jump into Leon and Helena's story. At this point, it is now June of 2013, where we find Leon S. Kennedy and Secret Service agent Helena Harper in the U.S. city of Tall Oaks. U.S. President Adam Benford informs Leon of his plan to publicize the previously protected details of the Raccoon City incident in order to help combat global bioterrorism. But this noble act of transparency is never realized, as the city is conveniently ravaged by yet another bioterror attack, ironically turning Tall Oaks into Raccoon City 2.0. President Benford unfortunately turns into a zombie and is put down by Leon. Blaming herself for this current mess, Helena manages to convince Leon to follow her to Tall Oaks Cathedral, where she promises to show Leon the truth. It's here that we find a lab where it's revealed that Derek Simmons, the National Security Advisor, is actually the one who kidnapped Helena's sister Deborah in order to force her to help him carry out the viral attack on Tall Oaks as a way to stop President Benford from revealing the truth. Alright, now it's a good time to talk about how our Ada clone came to be. Turns out, Simmons is super obsessed with the real Ada Wong. Problem was, she wasn't exactly feeling it. But instead of liking every single one of her Instagram pics in the false hopes that she'll give him the time of day, like a normal guy would, he genetically modifies his lead researcher to look like the chick who proverbially swiped left. And the ironic and hilarious part is the fact that Carla didn't want him either. But let's get back on track. Deborah, who we now catch up with, was unfortunately a victim of Simmons' experimentation. She turns into a grotesque enemy that Leon and Helena have to put down with the help of the real Ada Wong, who reveals that Simmons is actually the main antagonist of the story, who was not only responsible for covering up the details of Raccoon City, but that he is a part of a shadow organization hell-bent on world domination. After Leon and Ada part ways, they come across Simmons, who reveals his plan to frame the pair for the current outbreak, with the most recent incident occurring in Lianshan, China. In an attempt to quell this incident for good, without any further interference from Simmons, the two fake their deaths and head to China. Now, let's pick off where we left off with Chris. After spending 6 months out of the action due to his amnesia, Chris and company find themselves pulled back into the fray when they report to China. Now, at this point, Jake and Sherry manage to escape the facility. It's here that they cross paths with Leon and Helena, where details of Simmons' villainy are exposed, which surprises Sherry since she directly reports to him. Chris eventually regains all of his memories and is now determined to pursue and kill the fake Ada. This brings him face to face with Leon in one of the most badass hand-to-hand combat sequences in the game. Keep in mind that both still don't know about Carla being Ada's clone. Carla manages to escape during the confusion. While Chris and Piers pursue her, Leon, Helena, Jake, and Sherry eventually converge on Simmons' location, where he reveals his evil plan. In an ironic twist, Simmons is infected by a concentrated dose of the C-virus, which turns him into a weird quadruped transformer. And then an actual dinosaur. No, I'm serious. Anyway, Jake and Sherry manage to get captured, again, and taken to a Neo-Umbrella undersea laboratory. More on this later. Chris and Piers chase Carla on board an aircraft carrier where she reveals her plan to infect the entire city with a missile loaded with the virus. But before she manages to do so, a member of Simmons' organization flies in on a chopper and shoots Carla, seemingly to her death. I'll touch upon this in a bit. But in typical Resident Evil fashion, the missile goes off anyway, turning Lianshan into a zombie-infested hellscape. Chris and Piers manage to escape. It's here that, upon seemingly defeating Simmons, Leon informs Chris of how important Jake is due to his immunity, as well as the fact that he is Wesker's offspring. Chris then makes his way to the undersea facility to rescue Jake and Sherry. While this happens, the seemingly defeated Simmons comes back as Jeff Goldblum.
It's an older code, sir, but it checks out.
After one of the most annoying fights in this game, Leon and Helena manage to defeat Simmons for good. That brings us to the end of Leon's campaign. Now, upon Chris and Piers arriving and eventually rescuing Jake and Sherry, he, for some reason, reveals that he was the one responsible for killing Jake's father. And Jake turns his gun on Chris in anger for some reason. I will comment on this later. After the situation diffuses, the two pairs split up. Jake and Sherry escape, but not before encountering Mr. Not X one final time. And after a good old round of fisticuffs, Jake manages to defeat Ustanok, essentially bringing his story to a close. Now, while this occurs, Chris and Piers encounter a massive BOW called House that was designed to spread the C virus on a global scale. The battle proves to be extremely difficult, resulting in Piers being mortally wounded. Seeing no other option out, he injects himself with a concentrated dose of the C virus, which grants him electrical abilities. The two eventually managed to defeat House. However, realizing that there was no hope for himself, Piers convinces Chris to escape without him, which he reluctantly does, escaping the facility as it self-destructs. Now, as far as Ada's campaign goes, I'm not going to cover it in depth like I did the other three, as the majority of it runs independently, save for some crossovers. She pretty much focuses on derailing Simmons' plans while chasing Carla down and offering minor support to the main cast. And with that, we are done with the story of Resident Evil 6. Now, to keep this video from being massively too long, I'm going to be doing a second part to this. So, if you guys enjoy the sound of my voice, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, and stick around for part 2 of Resident Evil 6, Was It That Bad? This is AJ, signing out.